you want to be able to do insane AOE damage and still maintain a high single damage output, well then I have the historic build for you. What's up, world distributor? Back with another video. Today we're checking out all things Diablo, and this is specifically the Diablo 4 beta, and we're trying out a build that I've kind of come up with after a while. Now, I have messed with a few builds already. I've messed with fire, I've messed with ice, and after all said and done, I kind of feel like this is just the better build. Now, what does that consist of? So first off, let's start off, we'll go through the build really quickly, then I'll explain why I choose each thing, we'll go over some minor details that I think you should know, and then we'll kind of end off with some of my ending thoughts on the build overall and kind of what I think it could potentially lead to. Okay, so first up, let's jump into the skill tree here. And the first main ability that you're going to want to start with is this ability here. It's called Spark, and you're going to want to pop all 5 in there. And then you're going to want to take obviously the 2 after that. Now you can swap out for Crackling Energy, and I will add a little tidbit here. The Crackling Energy is these little energy balls that go on the ground, and you go pick them up, and they can increase either your damage or they can increase your mana absorption, things of that nature. For me, I don't really like to walk around and find certain things, so if you want to have the Crackling Energy build, you can do that and kind of reverse whatever I do on here, because I don't take any Crackling Energy. But again, I don't really think it's very useful, especially when you have to keep moving, and even during boss fights when you have to keep moving around and you got to get your character to different spots and you're trying to cast abilities and watch out for mechanics. I just don't think Crackling Energy is the way to go. So let's start off. So here we go into here, just the basic Spark. Now we're going to go into Enhanced Spark, obviously, because you have to. And then we're going to go into Glinting Spark. This is going to give us some crit chance. And the crits they do hit hard, especially when the spark kind of bounces around. Then we'll lead off into here. Now, some of these abilities you will see, like this having 1. This is just from an item that I have. It says item contribution, so that might be a little bit confusing here with certain things, but if you see that on one of these, that could be my item contribution, and I will show a different part there as well, where one of my items I use right now at the meantime, but you don't really need it. So then I come over into here, because the lightning, it really does use a lot of mana, especially for the one ability that I take, so you're going to want to pop into here and take this increased mana charge. Now after that, I didn't really notice you could maybe take elemental dominance. I don't think it's worth at the moment, especially with what you have already, and you kind of have to use basically every point here. So then next up, we're going to take Chain Lightning. Now this ability is so good, as it bounces around to different enemies and it will seek out different enemies. So when I was playing Fire and when I was playing Frost, you can only really cast on one enemy. There isn't really a chain ability. Now Fire did have an ability that went through enemies, and so it would kind of hit an enemy behind another, but it doesn't exactly chain like this, and this is just insane for damage. And you'll see some clips here that I'll showcase where the Chain Lightning is just bouncing around everywhere, hitting a bunch of enemies, and the more that it bounces around, the more damage it does, and if it bounces off you, it'll deal an increased amount of damage, and it's just insane. It'll go up to 6 times, as it says, and it's just a really, really good ability. Now we're going to go into here, we're going to go in Enhanced Chain Lightning, and then we're going to go into Greater Chain Lightning. Now again, this does have the Crackling Energy charge, so if you wanted to use Crackling Energy, just go ahead and switch those two. Now to the next up tree, I currently have an item that gives me all of these right now at this moment. And so what I use this one for is Teleport. However, I haven't really utilized Teleport as much as I'd like to. The only time I saw another build guide video where somebody used Teleport, or they were talking about saying that Teleport's like a must, which eventually it probably will be, but I didn't really use it like that. There was one time where I wanted to get behind a doorway where I used Teleport, so I was teleporting past the doorway because it is quite far, so I teleported past the doorway, and then there was like another part where there was like an ice wall, and I teleported past the ice wall. Again, during a boss fight, during other mechanics, I found out I'm not really using it, and even if you read up in here into the ability itself, it does say that it does damage when you land on a target. And so for me, like, I was kind of doing it that way, and there was no point for me to use the teleport because it was just doing minimal amounts of damage and wasn't a point for it. Was like I was wasting the teleport just to like teleport nowhere. So I would avoid that one for now unless you get the item, which the item is the amulet. And this amulet, I'm pretty sure everybody gets at the end of the game, and that will give you the ability for that. What you'll want to do in this one, though, that is massive to me, and I feel like it is most utilized. And I am on World 2, just to know. So I'm in the harder difficulty, but you're going to want to take Glass Cannon all 3, it's just worth it. This game drops so many potions that you're going to want to go into Glass Cannon. It does a lot of damage, increased damage of 18, and even in Lost Ark, everybody takes Cursed Owl, kind of just how it is, so you're definitely going to want to go into Glass Cannon. Now, next up, we do want to take Lightning Spear. Lightning Spear has another ability that will also seek out enemies, and I'll show a few clips of where it seeks out, and you can kind of see it here, kind of moving around. But I'll also show clips of the build of where it kind of is seeking out enemies, and I'll do some footage later on and kind of showcase how the build works. But you'll see that it just goes out and seeks enemies, and it does a really good job, and it lasts a long time. And with the other ability, both seeking out enemies, they're so good because you're not having to cast solo on any of these mobs. Again, I have an item here that kind of confuses things, but we'll also add to that rank. Now, the last thing that you'll want to take is your ultimate. Your ultimate, you're going to want the ultimate. The ultimate seems pretty cool. And there is a lot of stuff other here, a lot of things that we could take on this other path here as well, but I would just go with the ultimate. Because like here, this is only 1% increased strike chance. There's some other things here, but I would get your ultimate ability. You're really going to need that. And so it's really hard to swap out anything in this build here because you're going to want the damage of Lightning Spear. And I noticed that the enhanced thing like this, like 5% increased crit, that is nice, but I did go all four points into this ability, and also had an item here that made it 5, so technically this would be at 4, I think, if you didn't have the item contributing to it. Otherwise, you can go into Enhanced Lightning Spear if you do have the extra point there. But that does about cover it for the build. It's not super crazy. Again, you're going to want the mana charge and the Glass Cannon. That's the biggest part of the build. It's because it does so much damage, but also just having the Chain Lightning and the normal Spark is really, really good. It just does so much damage, and I'll showcase it here really, really quickly. Hopefully we can find enemies pretty fast inside this dungeon, and I'll just showcase how fast these mobs will just get picked up easily and get basically deleted. Now I also have like Flame Shield on here, and the reason why I have Flame Shield is because, again, it's just a part of an ability, or a part of an item that gave me the ability, so I might as well have it on. But you'll just see as it picks apart all those mobs right there, it's pretty good. And these are level 25, so you'll see that it is quite strong for what it is. And we got, and it honestly, with certain boss mobs, it runs through them so quickly. It honestly feels so good. Like for these examples, it's just all these mobs are going to be deleted from the sparks. As you see, they're flying around. I can really just avoid mechanics here and kind of do what I want. I don't have to really even do anything. All the mobs are already dead, and I can just now fight this mob very easily. And you can see even the single target damage is very good. You see that the damage is pretty good even for a single target, and it clears the mob so quickly. It's hard to really not want to take this build, especially when you compare it to things like the Frost build, which has the little AOE thing and things of that nature, but it just doesn't have what this build has as far as seeking out all the enemies. And so it is honestly, and I just cut this guy off here, but it's honestly a really fun build to work with. And I noticed a few other people running the Lightning build recently, but as of earlier, a lot of people weren't. They were running that Ice build, and again, I saw a YouTube video of the Ice build, and that was where the guy said to take the teleport, but this one I just feel like is a lot better. Now, some things to note around is enemies like this that have this like extra charge are going to be a lot, so we're going to go ahead and alt here, just so that we can get them down. But you just see how fast it gets them down, and it is just really fun to work with. We're kind of on a mana here, but again, that's fine. And so that's also what else I wanted to talk about is that certain abilities, if you look, certain abilities don't actually use mana. And so, for example, this Lightning Spear doesn't require any mana at all to use, and that's partially why I take it, because our Chain Lightning is going to be our main use of the mana in this build. And another few examples of not using any mana are like things like teleport. So teleport is also not going to use any mana. And if you have Fire Shield, if you have like an item contributing here, Fire Shield also doesn't use any mana. So you really want to look for what abilities use mana, because you're not going to want to take, like I noticed a lot of people having like 4 or 5 abilities and a lot of them use mana. You're not going to be able to do that, and there's no point, especially when these are instant cast and your main Chain Lightning ability does so much damage, and you want to really get that mana up with this ability as well, or with this perk as well. So again, just go through, make sure you're checking these. If you want to swap out anything from my build, now there isn't like a lot of stuff to do right now because you're level 25 is the max in the beta, but if you want to go through, check out what abilities do have mana costs, and then you could swap out for certain ones. Again, that was really good for me because the Chain Lightning costs mana, but however, Lightning Spear doesn't. That's why I also use it, along with Teleport that doesn't cost any mana, along with my ult that doesn't cost any mana, and along with Flame Shield, but again, you probably won't have Flame Shield, I just have it from an item that doesn't cost any mana. You probably won't have these two, the Teleport and the Flame Shield, but you will have your ult, you will have your Lightning Spear, and you will have your 2 instant casts, which is really all you need for this build. But that does about cover it, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you like, and subscribe, and until the next one. Deuces.